Hello, everybody, and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around fancy Premier League. My name's Suj.
And my name is James.
It is Friday morning, a bit of an odd day for us to have a full episode, but then we've had a full set of fixtures midweek to look through, James. Game week 19 is not over because we still have Chelsea Fulham next Thursday. But for a lot of people, it's close to or as over it can be. Some of the players that people are still banking on for the double game week, we all own, like Kepa, or are not playing.
Everyone on Twitter feels like they own Kepa.
No, well, the only people that listen, everyone that listens to this podcast on Twitter, I can tell you that. I bet there's very few people who listen to the pod who aren't active as part of the community.
I
generally
would say there are definitely people listening to this podcast who have got Edison, Ramsdale, Leno, Danny Ward, and Everson.
Yeah,
there'll be alternatives, mate.
But they'll still be on. Well, to be fair, there's hosts of this podcast that aren't on Twitter, so I can't assume that all the listeners of this podcast would be on Twitter as well. Because
you are on Twitter. Stop bullshitting.
I'm on Twitter. I just
don't like to use it much.
use it like a dirty dish rag. James, this has been a difficult week from a kind of footballing point of view, but obviously my club, not only we lost our owner and chairman on Wednesday. Just before we started recording today, we've had the sad news now that Gianluca Vialli has passed away, sadly, aged 58 from a recurrence of pancreatic cancer. And he was around, he's a modern day, in the Premier League era player. So a lot of the listeners will obviously know him and have memories of him as well, scoring goals for Chelsea in the Premier League. Sad news, unfortunately. The one thing that money can't buy is health. And really disappointing. I mean, you look at David Gold, obviously passed away aged 86, and you think, you know what, that's getting what you'd consider a full life and what have you. 58 still seems so young.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we spoke on David Gold on length on our Tottenham Patreon podcast on Wednesday. We literally just had the Vialli news just as we was about to record. Top goal scorer, very much knew where the onion bag was for Juventus and Italy, and then was part of a large Italian contingent that joined Chelsea. I want to say 1996, and obviously went on to manage the club as well. Proper good goal scorer. Always come across like a really nice, genuine bloke. He was very, very likable. I was general manager of the Italy team, kind of behind the scenes of Roberto Mancini's European Championship winning team. You'll see a lot of videos going around on social media today of Mancini and Vialli, I should imagine. So yeah, that's a real sad loss to football, that one.
And obviously thoughts with his family and anybody affected and concerned with the situation. I wouldn't say that I'm quite. I've had a bad game week, but I don't think it's a good week to have a bad game week, if you know what I mean. There's only a handful of players.
I reckon we should stop this shit. I reckon there's never a good week.
there's not. But if you look at it's actually, my rank has dropped massively, but the average this week being 43, and I scored 33. You were what, 44 so far? We should all add so far, because when Kepa saves 3 penalties again,
Kepa and Andreas Pereira ain't going to do a lot for my rank next Thursday, I don't think.
But 2 weeks ago, mate, the average was 72. So as it stands at the moment, it's not disastrous. My gaming rank of 8.2 million. But there comes moments in the season that I was reflecting on where my plan is kind of sort of set. I know what my next couple of moves might be, and so I'm on autopilot mode. So like it's you don't necessarily feel like you're managing your team or making very fun, creative decisions. You're going through the motions. Like I decided in the end to keep Martial for the Bournemouth home game as opposed to sell him for Mitrovic. Sorry, not Bournemouth, Forest home game. Not what talking about.
Bournemouth. You're right the first time, mate.
And they went and scored 3 goals at home, but he just didn't happen to be involved in any of them. So I don't reflect on it. Well, listen, Martial is a fucking pain in the arse.
I told you that.
But he got 68 minutes. He got me 2 points, right? But in the end, Mitrovic obviously was the alternative. He picked up a goal. He got 3 points more, but then he's suspended for the second game. So it could have been worse, right? The Martial to Mitrovic, it could have ended up if Mitrovic got to double digits, a real spread that ended up being 3 points, which is neither here nor there. I decided I was going to keep Robertson and play Robertson, and Liverpool disappointed on Monday. So having triple Liverpool at the moment seems a bit of a mistake. And we all cheered yesterday when Walker and Cancelo and Foden and co are all back in the team.
And do you know what?
For about 45 minutes.
Do you know what? Just remove fantasy. I think that first half of football last night made me more angry than any other 45 minutes of football I've watched this season.
Okay.
Honestly, I'll talk about it later. It made me so angry the way Manchester City played. Nothing to do with fantasy. I just don't know what he was doing again. But fair game, like he fixed it, and then they won.
Yeah. It just feels like autopilot at the moment, James. So it's sometimes there's bigger things than your fantasy football team in going on in the world and to worry about and what have you. And for me, like this week and the next week kind of sort of feels like that. Like I know I'm selling Martial, barring any injury news. I'm selling Martial and I'm buying Callum Wilson. And
is that even if Manchester United have this mythical double game week that people still think might happen?
I'm working off the assumption that they won't. And it's likely that even if they do, I still will probably make that transfer.
Let me at least make one thing clear to people, right? You know, Man City, Tottenham currently have a double in game week 20. They don't have a double if City draw on Sunday or if Tottenham draw tomorrow. So please wait for the cup results to go. And I would even say the Carabao Cup results as well before you make transfers. There's probably a few. If you're making transfers on players who don't have Carabao Cup involvement, like I think probably on Monday, you're probably safe to go to Harry Kane, for example. But at least wait this weekend out. Kane will play for Tottenham tomorrow, I should imagine, by the way. So please wait. Get information is way more important than thumping about and I want to save the 0.1. I want to get the 0.1. The landscape of the physical next game week could change after this weekend. So please at least give it to Monday or Sunday night.
And your week was a bit better than mine for two reasons. I guess you obviously did buy Mitrovic. You take those 5 points, and you played Ben White ahead of. I had Andy Robertson, and I couldn't.
So I've only beat you by 1 point.
No. You beat me by 11 points.
I thought you said you got 43 or something.
No, 33.
Oh fuck yeah, that's bad.
Yeah, 33.
Yeah, I'm 44 for my week, which to just explain the difference. You've got Rashford as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I've got Rashford and I've got Trippier. There must be only other returns.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. So I take it you captained Haaland, did you?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, no regrets on that, by the way. I knew that it was one of them where it was close enough for me that I didn't need to take the chance. I actually was surprised that Mitrovic's EO got into kind of the 80-90% mark, depending on where your rank is and stuff. I didn't think it would get that high. And actually, I was surprised that Haaland come down as low as sort of 150%. So I think for me, I'm always liable to be someone where there's a little bit of a coin toss mentality to it. And one of the things I'd been saying through the week was I thought City would probably go to Chelsea and win very comfortable. And wasn't convinced that Fulham would go off against Chelsea and Leicester. For example, I was predicting 2 Fulham goals across the double, and I'd been predicting City to win 3-1 at Chelsea. So I think for me, looking at it like that in plain sight, it was a case of any doubt here, just go with the guy with the ownership. I didn't need to take the chance. I know there was a lot of people worrying last night. What I couldn't have foreseen is Guardiola deciding to completely rip up his template of how he wants his teams to play football. In terms of tactical and positional. But yeah, I had no regrets on that. If I go back to the start of the week, I still captain Haaland again. He had a decent chance in the first half, despite the way City were playing, where he's controlled it and hit it in a flash. And if it goes in, everyone goes, ooh, So, but then obviously the Mitrovic owners will be feeling the other way and going, oh, well, if he ain't got booked. And have you seen the booking?
No.
It's not a booking.
Okay.
Yeah, he's really unlucky. I think he comes out to press on Harvey Barnes. They've obviously like defend the set piece, and he comes out to press. Barnes goes backwards, and Mitrovic fouls him, but he's going away from goal. It's not a yellow card. It's really unlucky to pick that up, actually.
Yeah, well, look, we obviously don't have to prep for the next game week just yet. We'll be recording plenty of content before then. So we can rattle through these games and just anything to take away and particularly think about. Using livefpl.net, James, I'm looking at one of the things I do in Sky Fantasy Football is always measure how far I am off the top 100. Like you can scroll down the leaderboard and measure a number of points because of the way the transfers work.
Don't do that in this game. It'll make me feel like shit, mate.
No, exactly. But the thing is, with that game, it's different because the number of transfers people have is different. You can actually gauge where you are. So that's how I know whether or not my transfers plus the gap in points is kind of there or thereabouts or reasonable. But here now, I'm looking at top 100K, for example, 57 points ahead of where I am. Top 50K, 71 points. That feels a lot. I'm not going to lie, it feels a lot. Even top 100K, 57 points. Like that's like 5, 6, 7 good game weeks above average to catch that up because of the amount of good managers in that, and also obviously the amount of teams that are so similar. 8, 9 players the same in so many teams. It feels like climbing up to the top 100K is going to be difficult.
We said this
very
last
difficult.
week that if there was a takeaway on this season so far, where I think I had this on a question I did for our patrons last week, was like, is this the toughest FPL season ever? I get that question every single year, but one thing is definitely true on this year because of the template nature of the game. Yeah, sure, it's harder to make gains, and you will have to differentiate at some point. Doesn't mean you have to do it now. Got half the season to go, Suj.
Yeah, I'm not worried.
Half the season to go, but more than half the fixtures, remember, right? There's going to be some big double game weeks and stuff still to come in this season. So, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I look at like top 100K, 54 points off, but what with 19 game weeks to go, give or take 3 points a week or so, keep chipping away at it.
Let's talk about some of these games, starting with Monday. When Brentford done a number on Liverpool, mate.
Yeah, done a number is a really good thing to say.
3-1.
Exactly what they did.
And you know, when you went there and drew 2-2, and then we went there and got beat. Sorry, they came to ours and won. They're no joke, Brentford, right? Any day, any time. We've seen what they've done to Manchester United as well. That second season syndrome isn't really happening. They're doing.
No,
great.
And to be honest, that the Tottenham
and without Tony as well, right?
Tottenham draw on Monday last week at Brentford now looks like a good result in hindsight, doesn't it?
It does.
They have very recently beat Liverpool. They beat Man City in game week 16. They demolished Manchester United at the start of this season. They won at Stamford Bridge last year. They beat Arsenal in the opening day last season. Tottenham actually are now the only Big Six team that they haven't beaten. I can hear the Newcastle fans screaming at the back. Yes, I know they haven't beat you either. But they've become a team now where I think if you're not on it, you're gonna get done. Because you can almost guarantee with them, particularly in home games, that they will be on it. And they play the percentages really well. Gary Neville made a comment on Monday night after the game, which was quite interesting. I thought it was a little bit harsh, but it had an interesting nature to it, where he said basically they were becoming the modern day Wimbledon. And I think all we meant by that was in the sense of the romantic nature of it. They are a small club. You know that if you don't turn up with the right mentality, you'll get beat. They don't just lump it down the pitch and stuff. Yes, they use their forwards to try and get people turned and stuff. Yes, they'll take long throws in the final third, and they're very good at slowing the game down, taking their time over their own attacks and stuff, i.e. with those long throws and stuff. And they are an awkward team to play against. And I said to you last week, tell you what, if we don't have a lot of rain, Liverpool going to struggle on that pitch. I'm telling you. And they did. And Brentford were thoroughly deserving winners. Honestly, if Brentford had been 4-0 up at half time, might have been a bit over the top. I don't think Liverpool overly could have complained. They defended at times in that game particularly in the first half, like a Park team. I've been saying it last couple of weeks. They're not right. They're not right, despite the victories against Villa and Leicester, and they're not right. If they don't fix this, they're not going to finish top four, because the conceding is not just the goals that they're conceding too many big chances. Every single team in this league could almost know that they're going to have a big chance against Liverpool. And unless that stops, they're going to keep having infrequent and dodgy results. Now, again, this is another example where on a different day, they might have got something out of it. When Chamberlain scored, and it was not long after Núñez had obviously had his goal disallowed, you thought, oh, they're going to get back into it. And Brentford were probably thinking about the Tottenham game, thinking, oh, shit, not this again. But they held their nerve, got obviously the breakaway goal with Mbeumo for the third, which is, despite Jurgen Klopp's protestations, absolutely is not a foul. I don't know what he's moaning about. Honestly, I saw a great comment from our friend Rob Chetty, FPL Panda, who said at our time, can see Klopp's mind trying to work out what he's going to moan about after this particular defeat. Yeah, not good. The midfield is still the big problem. And to be honest, a little bit, particularly that first half, Brentford bullied them a bit. Van Dijk is obviously injured and is going to miss a little bit of a spell. We don't know how long yet at this stage.
It's a hamstring, isn't it? Potentially.
Which was interesting because Klopp's comments after the game was that he literally said, quote, there's no injury. He said he felt a bit of tightness and I took the decision to take him off. And the physios were happy. Well, it seems like actually, yeah, there is a bit of an injury, which may well explain. There was a moment in the first half where Mbeumo ran away from him. It was like Van Dijk was running backwards. You think, oh my God, that is not the Virgil van Dijk I know. And it might have been he was already injured at that point, in fairness. And I think Liverpool might be better off without him for a little while. The one thing with Konate is better recovery pace. I know he's got done on that third goal, but better recovery pace. They actually can be a little bit more aggressive with their higher line. I think with him in the team, they'll need to keep Matip fit to play alongside him. But that's not a terrible centre-back partnership at all. Obviously, they will miss Van Dijk's leadership and stuff, but nobody can say to me Virgil van Dijk has had a good football season, because he hasn't. And he's 31 now. And he's not one of them players we ever kind of mention his age. He's just he's a Rolls Royce. He'll always be on it, won't he? But yeah, not good. Trent's first assist of the season, Suj. Can you believe that?
Mental. I'm sitting here with Robertson James, who obviously didn't start with a dead leg. He did come on.
Yeah, he'll come back.
Yeah, I'm not worried about that, but I've sleepwalked into triple Liverpool here with Darwin, who keeps getting the chances and because of that doesn't feel like he's droppable. Mo Salah, who is always still one of the best assets in the game, and Andy Robertson. So it's not even like I've got three shit Liverpool assets. They're three quality Liverpool assets. But I don't know if I want them. Honestly, I think I'm done with Robertson. I can live without him. Because they're not going to keep that many clean sheets, and I can't rely on his attacking returns to justify having him in there. Their fixtures are okay. They've got a good one and a bad one and a good one. There's some difficult ones in there, but I think Andy Robertson's going to go. My challenge with getting rid of Andy Robertson, James, is where do I go? Because I've already got, I'll end up with triple Liverpool, Trippier, Almiron and Wilson, so I can't double up on the Liverpool defence. I think it's still too early to double up on the Arsenal defence. Until they get the Manchester City game out of the way. So where do I go? Like Luke Shaw maybe might be a consideration, but it's not like there are defenders jumping out to jump to. I might just kind of hold it for a couple and then game week 22 or something like that. Look at Luke Shaw.
Botman, Newcastle.
I can't triple Newcastle, mate. I'll have Wilson, Almiron and Trippier.
Arsenal, Ben White, you've got already, haven't you?
I don't want to double up yet.
Okay.
Yeah. They're just defensive options as a general. I don't think there are loads out there, are
there? Maybe Brentford. Like a Rico Henry or something.
Yeah, I think I'm going to end up going cheap.
I mean, have you got Patterson as well?
No, I haven't. I've got Nico Williams sitting there.
Because he's out for 6. Oh, Nico Williams the one. See, that's another problem you've got, isn't it? I think you got to assess that, I think, Suj, and ask yourself, all right, you made the decision to go to Robertson. Okay, it's not looking great at the moment, but you knew you were getting him in for the offensive stuff. You might feel differently if he'd started the game. he admittedly would have got the same return for you at one point. I don't know. Is that your biggest problem coming up?
No,
It might not be.
but I've got 2 frees, by the way, James. So,
Well, maybe even it's into City defensive and cheaper, like a John Stones or something that looks quite reliable again after performances recently for Manchester City. So, but they're not on big radar for me, and there'll be a lot of people be selling Salah Nunes this week. So, Salah, obviously, if De Bruyne has the double with Liverpool's form, you can see that being a popular transfer. And Nunes, I mean, wow, 7 big chances in the last 3 games. So none scored.
what can you do?
He's missed 15 of 19 big chances this season. Now, like all of these narratives, it depends where you sit on that in terms of you can't hit a cow's ass with a banjo, or the inevitable haul is going to come at some stage. But, you know, if people are looking to get Harry Kane in this week, if Tottenham have the double and stuff, then I can see people looking at sacrifices. And it would be, have you got Nunes as well?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, for you, that's the sort of thing. If you look at, you're going, right, Nunes to Kane, and then whatever you got left is making your Robertson decision almost.
Well, if I went Nunes to Kane and Martial to Callum Wilson, then I just stick a 4.2 defender in. Any. Take your pick.
Did you go with Bueno?
No, I didn't.
I mean, look, there's worse choices you can have than that at 3.9. He's playing every game at the moment.
Yeah. It's a consideration, and that would be a -4. But then I much prefer looking at Kane, Wilson, Haaland as a front 3 than Darwin, Martial, and Haaland as it stands at the moment. And I play Ben White every week.
I
talk about go on.
Don't know what I'm going to do yet with Mo Salah, because the sort of move I'm thinking is, to be honest, I don't have a major issue with Mo at the moment. It also feels like all these big chances Nunes have missed, feels like Salah's correct the majority of them recently. But obviously, if I decide I want to get in Kane, then the only way I'm doing it is by selling Salah. So right now I've got 0.1 available, enough to go from Mitrovic to Kane and Salah to Odegaard. Or if I wait too long and the value's gone, Rodrigo is an alternative to Odegaard I'm considering at the moment as well. So I'm not desperate to get, I know I'm saying, yeah, Odegaard, like, fuck, I need to get him in, but I'm also not desperate to get him in for Tottenham and Manchester United in the next 2. And Rodrigo does have a good run of fixtures. He's now up to 10 league goals, Rodrigo. So he's a little bit cheaper, and he's not out of my thinking at the moment.
Arsenal 0, Newcastle 0, clash up in the battle of the top 4, and Newcastle wanted to stay in the top 4, Arsenal wanted to the league. 0-0 was one that we could have predicted. Probably both teams might want to.
Just one more thing on Brentford, just what I remember is obviously, like, great win without Tony, which you'd mentioned. We don't know at the moment what the situation is.
No.
And then Bournemouth, Leeds, Southampton, next 3. And if he was to look to be in the clear, like, I don't mind him as an option. I don't think Mbeumo's a bad option. Just note they've bought Kevin Schade on loan, who's a forward, with an option to make that permanent in the summer. And I said to you, they'll know what they're doing, right, in terms of trying to cover this up with Tony, because he's probably going to miss some amount of football at some point. That's what they've decided to do. Newcastle, really good. And I can feel the Arsenal fans already down the back of my neck going, what are you talking about, James? Really good, because in those first 10 minutes or so, Arsenal looked like they were going to blow Newcastle away. It really, really did. In fact, it was the most I've seen Newcastle under Eddie Howe on the ropes. It was like, oh my God, Christ. Arsenal were going to tear these apart. You know, Arsenal's XG was higher in the first 7 minutes than the rest of the game combined.
Wow.
They came out the traps so fast, which is obviously credit to Arsenal. But then Newcastle decided to put it to bed, with stop this shit, because they knew they were going to get annihilated. And they just started breaking up the game, making it difficult. They started getting Dan Burn some help for Saka, because Saka was going to destroy him. They really helped out with numbers on that side, with Willock and Joel Linton helping him out. And they made the game horrible. And they had to. Newcastle have been an extremely good football team this season. We've given them a lot of credit. Sometimes you got to realise you're up against something better. And Newcastle did what they had to do to get something out of that game. And to be honest, once they got beyond that period and started getting up to 25 minutes, 30 minutes, they settled down. They had the odd decent moment themselves. Joelinton should have scored right on half time from a flick on from a corner. And actually, by the end, because of the way they defended, I felt they were valued to get the point out of it. And, you know, talking about defensive options, I know what you're saying about you don't want treble up and stuff. I mean, who defensively is actually showing themselves to be a particularly good option at the moment? But it's these, isn't it? It was Newcastle and Arsenal, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
It's these two teams. And I'd said to you on the last pod that I wouldn't be surprised if this ended 0-0, because I could vision that if Newcastle got through the early stages, that this might be what they do and make it ugly. And listen, was it a good pure football watcher? And no, it was an awful game of football to watch. And it was an awful game of football because Newcastle made it that way. But it's to Newcastle's credit that they did, because most other teams would have absolutely folded after the way Arsenal started that game. And Arsenal didn't really create enough. And the big issue amongst Arsenal fans, which you're obviously beginning to speak about, and probably highlighted even more by the fact Man City made 2 subs last night and they combined for the goal within 3 minutes, was Arsenal didn't have the offensive changes to be able to change this up. I think Arteta decided not to use Vieira because the game was physical and horrible. And he probably decided not to use Marquinhos for similar reasons. But obviously with Jesus injured, suddenly the bench looks a little bit light of attacking options. And that's begun to concern Arsenal fans. What I'd say is, I don't think it's a major issue unless someone else gets injured. And obviously Emil Smith-Rowe is nearing a return as well. But that ability to have been able to bring something different into the game would have been welcomed. And it looks they've obviously been trying to get Mudryk from Shakhtar Donetsk, who's very highly rated. But it looks like the Ukrainians are being really kind of sticking to their valuation of the player, which is big. We're talking over 80 million or so. And we think there's some interest from Chelsea now as well. So that looked kind of nailed on to be a transfer, and is looking less so. And I can already feel the narrative. If they don't buy an attacking player in this window, I can feel Arsenal fans getting angry about it and thinking that it may cost them. For Newcastle, good run of fixtures. Fulham, Palace, West Ham, Bournemouth. Next 4. So, you know, again, subject to what happens with doubles or doesn't happen and stuff. Wilson, along with, again, Antony, what happens with him, he's definitely in my end as a potential to dip in instead of, say, Mitrovic. Maybe it's not even Kane for me. Maybe I decide to get a Wilson or a Tony to complement a Mitrovic and Haaland and go back to a 3 up front, for example. He's definitely on radar. Of course, one of those moves I could do to come down from Salah. I mentioned Odegaard and Rodrigo. It's right in front of your face, James. Are you going to keep overlooking Mikel Almiron? Which from the fixture perspective actually is probably the best of the 4. And I wouldn't be overly concerned that he came off early last night. The only thing I felt I wish Newcastle had done, and I spoke about him saying he's probably on the way out of the club eventually. I did think when it got to the final 15 minutes, throw St. Maximin on. I'd have thrown St. Maximin on rather than Wood, and really try and pressure Arsenal over the top to physically try and win the game. It never felt like Newcastle were going to win the game.
Okay. Everton won, Brighton and Hove Albion 4.
Yikes.
I think this week we've seen... So I read the article on the BBC as 17 Everton fans have clubbed together to write a letter. I think it's actually 17 supporters groups have clubbed together. So there's a few more than just 17 fans have clubbed together, but they're not happy, mate, at Goodison.
Of course they're not, and they've got every right not to be.
Listen, my club is a joke at the moment, but they're making us feel at least we're not as bad as what the situation is at Everton. It feels at the moment, because I'm not sure if they're more likely to get sucked in and dragged in than we are, for example, as West Ham.
They're already in, dragged in.
True. I mean, we're already in, you could say, but it's looking very difficult. I mean, 4-1, Brighton, 19 shots on target, mate, 4 big chances, and fair play, they scored 3 of those 4 big chances created. Domination.
Yeah. Big
simple
domination.
As that.
They're still with Everton first. Worth noting, by the way, game week 20, you've got 18th versus 20th and 19th versus 17th. with obviously West Ham going to Wolves. So it feels like a big weekend. Everton, Southampton with Sean Norton, Matt Samuel's going to be our next clash of correspondence. It's going to be out for you on Tuesday as well. We ain't going to be talking about fantasy assets a lot. Certainly from Everton's perspective, the only one of interest, Patterson's now out for 6 weeks. And I have to say, some of the stuff I've seen from him defensively has not been good. Like even on the first goal on Tuesday night as well, he's properly piss poor, by the way. And Everton might actually benefit again from having Seamus Coleman's experience back in the team. What was really alarming about the defeat was the manner of some of the goals. So the third and the fourth goals are so bad. They are almost like giving up bad goals. The third goal, the way they just open up for Solly March is embarrassing. And obviously, Garner Gay's come back. He's not the player that left Everton. He's made a terrible back pass mistake for Pascal Gross, who's not the quickest, but manages to hold people off long enough and then scores an absolute terrific finish, which is compounded by, I think it's Mikalenko tries to go back on the line and slide in, and he slightly overdoes the slide and doesn't manage to get it away. And whenever Everton are bad, Everton are really, really, really are bad. And they're probably feeling a little bit grateful what 4-0 down with half hour to go that he didn't get worse than that.
Same teammate that at the weekend was drawing at Manchester City.
Yeah, but the thing is with that, you can say, well, it doesn't make sense, and of course, it doesn't.
No, different game plan. You dig in and
they played a back five at Man City.
Or maybe
they wound
back eight.
They wound City up. I mean, more like a back 10 or so, really. They wound City up. Godfrey and Haaland were having their lovers' tiff and stuff. Godfrey didn't play on Tuesday night. He changed system, went back to a back four. And I really, really think that they should have stayed with a back five. Onana was a miss for them because he's real box to box. He's a physical player. He was obviously suspended because of 5th yellow card, so he'd be back for the next one. But I was really surprised that they didn't just stick with the back five. And what, of course, is scary for Everton is after Southampton, there's a trip to West Ham, which doesn't look the worst game at the moment, but trust me, any away game will look difficult for Everton. Then it's Arsenal, then it's Liverpool. It looks like Frank Lampard's going to get the cup game at Manchester United tonight. But beyond that, I've no idea, mate. I think they'll change, and I think most Everton fans would probably change with Frank Lampard now because the run's too bad. It's like 5 points from the last 10 Premier League games. I remember early in the season they looked quite good defensively. They were going into sort of game week 6 or 7, conceded the least goals and stuff. And you think, they're giving themselves a platform, a chance and stuff. But the more they move away from the basics, the more problems they have. 5 points from 10 games is obviously pretty bad. So they may well change. I don't think many Evertonians would be disappointed if they did change. I'm sure there's some that would stick with Lampard. But the anger at the football club is all towards the board. But it's not going to fix the immediate problem. And they've got to do something this transfer window. Have to buy it forward, I promise you. Have to buy it. Don't buy forward, I think they'll go down. Brighton.
They've got a good run, mate, Brighton, now coming up. Liverpool at home is a difficult fixture, but they're at home and Liverpool are not all singing, all dancing. Leicester, Bournemouth, Palace, Fulham, and Newcastle, but then West Ham, Leeds. That's a decent run. I'm not sure where I'd dip in, to be honest with you.
I think it's
Brighton at the moment, but it is a decent run if you wanted to differentiate a little bit.
It's a run of form that's deceptive and you can spin it either way because Liverpool at home and Leicester away are difficult games. But actually for the offensive guys, there might be good games. And there's a few very cheap ones who are beginning to put their names forward. So Karu Mitoma is a player who Newcastle fans were screaming from game week 2, watch this kid. And I'd been doing similar from when I went to the Amex early in the season as well. He's direct. A lot of people have obviously seen him used as an impact substitute for Japan in the World Cup. He's 4.9, Suj. He's into that midfield bracket of interest. And obviously he's scored now in the last 2. And he might be getting to a place where he started 5 of the last 6, where he's becoming a regular starter. Now, if I had to go and buy Mitoma or Trossard, who was left out, and Brighton fans weren't surprised that he was left out, by the way, because he didn't play well in the Arsenal game or in their first game back either. That's not to say that the two players are linked. But if I had to buy Mitoma or Trossard tomorrow, buy Mitoma. That is super value at 4.9. But it's the age-old argument. You've also got Pereira. You've got Crescencio Somerville, 4.3 returned again this week. Honestly, you could put a decent midfield together for under 25, 26 million in this game. Honestly, you really could. So Mitoma's name is definitely one to keep an eye on. And obviously, Evan Ferguson played and scored and assisted up front. 11-point return following on from his goal against Arsenal. He is the second youngest player in Premier League history to score an assist in one match. Suj, do you know who the youngest was? It's a little trivia for everyone.
Second youngest, Wayne Rooney.
No, but you got the right era. A little bit earlier. You got the right nationality as well.
Michael Owen?
Yes, was Michael Owen. Was the youngest player to score and assist in a Premier League match. Evan Ferguson's now second. He's 18, but he doesn't look it.
No, I was going to say, he doesn't look 18, mate.
And he played, I want to say, and I might have this wrong, I think they played West Brom in the third round of Cup last year. And he played. And I remember after it that there was a lot of reaction from Brighton fans, like people we know, like Sam Murray and Brad Lewin and stuff, were like, tell you what, this kid has got a lot of potential. He's Irish, by the way, until England find out he's got an English grandmother or something. But Ireland probably want to get him straight into the national team, I should imagine. I'm going to be very careful with what I say. The player that I see a little bit of in him is Harry Kane. He's got the power. He's not frightened to shoot from distance. He's decent in the air. He's got the movement. His technique's okay. Before you dive in like a nutter at 4.5, because that will look very, very attractive, Danny Welbeck is going to be in the squad that plays at Middlesbrough in the FA Cup this weekend. Obviously, he's not been available. Welbeck is not a player that's going to get 20 goals a season for Brighton and stuff. We know that. But the job that he does to bring other players into play is important. So there's no guarantee that Ferguson's going to stay in the team. And I think before people go there, we just need a little bit of Ferguson versus Welbeck comparison when they're both available to have the information. Obviously, look, if you're looking to, I don't know, let's say you've got Nunes and Mitrovic and you're looking to downgrade Mitrovic to get Nunes to Kane, for example. And like, can you consider Ferguson as the third? Yes, you can at the moment, but I think you can only make that move if you know that he's not part of your starting lineup plans currently, because Welbeck might come back, might be fit, and might take his place back in the team. He's 18. He's obviously going to dip in and out and stuff, but he looks a super talent, and people are going to remember his name going forward.
Let's talk about Leicester, Fulham. By all intents and purposes, if you look at the data, I mean, Leicester missed 3 big chances that they had. Their XG was higher than Fulham's, just a little bit.
Eventually.
Yeah. They had more shots, they had more of the ball. So depending on how you want to look at it, Fulham nicked a 1-0 at Leicester, although Mitrovic at any game, any time, right? Even though it definitely won't be at Chelsea.
It's interesting that in the last 2 games, you could argue that Fulham have been a little bit fortunate because they weren't fantastic against Southampton. Either, and I don't know if there's anything telling on that perhaps a little bit of fatigue might be setting in. They've obviously done incredibly well, and they're a good side, and they deserve to be where they are in the league at the moment, no question. But yeah, they got away with it a little bit. Adebayo come back in for Diop, which I'd been warning and saying, you know, if you're going to go into Fulham defensively, it's probably Ream, and then Robinson's probably the second one where you should be okay. Don't go near the others because he's been flip-flopping with Diop, Adebayo too much to feel confident about it. And I wouldn't be surprised, by the way, if Diop comes back in for the Chelsea game. Bernd Leno's starting to perform well in goal. There was a kind of a long-running thing for a while where he'd not been making many saves. They hadn't kept a clean sheet for a long time with him in the team. He now looks like he's beginning to, you know, fill the shirt and stuff. And to be fair, he'd not been playing regular football for a long time, so it might be something he needed because he is a decent goalkeeper, actually. Mitrovic's ban is obviously going to be a blow against Chelsea, but of course he is available for what on paper looks 3 difficult fixtures: Newcastle away, Tottenham at home, Chelsea away. It's the first one in front of your face looks the toughest, really, is the Newcastle away game as it stands. Obviously, I don't think anyone's going to go and buy into Fulham as new. Pereira, 1 pointer. And I know a few people captained him and stuff, and you've been dirty unlucky. I think that's the first time he's got taken off pre-60, I want to say. So just feels really unlucky at the time of that. I don't think there's probably an issue with that. I think it's more Leicester obviously building up ahead of steam. On Leicester, it's concerning. It's 3 defeats, obviously, since we come back, and they too have had a difficult run of fixtures. But I know an interesting piece that The Athletic posted yesterday about Brendan Rodgers saying that players who were out of contract in the summer could go. And that includes a few players that's important to them, such as Yuri Tielemans, for example. And I wouldn't be surprised if he does move before the window closes. Dewsbury Hall picked up an issue and obviously didn't play. Daka picked up an issue at Liverpool. We don't know when James Maddison's returning. And suddenly, it looks really bare again. And they are in that cluster of the bottom 7 that's not clear of trouble. They go to Forest next. If Forest beat them, they go above them, I think,
Forest do. They're on the same points.
They're on the same
Forest.
points, yeah.
They're only 2 points ahead of us and Everton, mate, Leicester. So they could easily drop as low as the bottom 16th, 17th this weekend comfortably, which is a very dangerous position for them to be in.
Jamie Vardy got a rare 90 minutes. How many passes he completed in the game, Suj?
Let me have a guess. Jamie Vardy completed.
You're cheating. I know you're cheating.
Yeah, I know, cheating. Go on, tell us. Key passes,
3.
Accurate passes. 3 out of 9. But if that was Erling Haaland, he'd have scored 1 out of those 3.
I mean,
that's not good, is it? Three passes in 90 minutes.
No, it's not.
16 touches.
Look, while Daka's out, my personal opinion is that they should strip it and get Iheanacho up front with Vardy. I think Iheanacho in the front 2 score goals from. He'll fix a lot of immediate problems for him. I don't know the prognosis on how long Daka's out. And look, they were unlucky at Liverpool, and they were a little bit unlucky in this one as well. But it's like injuries have built up. A couple of players might leave. We don't have the impression from them that they're going to reinvest at the moment. We was aware of obviously problems last summer for them in the market. And yeah, just want to be a little bit careful. A little bit careful, maybe. I wouldn't be surprised if they dip in for a goalkeeper. Name that's getting mentioned a little bit is Martin Dubravka of Newcastle, who obviously has been recalled by Newcastle from a loan at Manchester United. United are going to sign Jack Butland on loan from Crystal Palace to solve that problem. But I think what's happened there is I think they've just taken Dubravka out the firing line because obviously Newcastle and Manchester United are in competition right now. Right, they're 3rd and 4th respectively. And I don't think they wanted to be in a position where it got towards the end of the season and say United and Newcastle competing for 4th and Dubravka's now become first choice because something's happened to De Gea and Dubravka's in that awkward position where he's obviously got to do well for United, but oh shit, if he does well for United, he's fucking Newcastle over. It was a really awkward one. And I think that's purely why they've recalled him, actually. They've now got, obviously, 4 goalkeepers. They've got Darlow, Karius, Dubravka, and obviously Pope. They're not keeping all 4 of them. Someone's going to go. And I just wonder if that becomes a Leicester City loan, possibly.
Swap deal for James Maddison?
Well, there's that possibly as well, yeah. I can see Newcastle going for Tielemans and Maddison before this window closes.
Manchester United 3, Bournemouth 0. At the end of the day, James, comfortable win for Manchester United, as we thought it would be. I mean, even the XG, mate, 2.2 versus a half. Like it's a clear win.
Bournemouth had a little spell of chances at 2-0 though.
But they didn't score.
No, they didn't.
So my question around this is now, obviously, Martial for me is expendable anyway. Now they go into City at home and then Arsenal away. And a lot of people might be thinking, well, we've had the 3 good fixtures for Manchester United and they've done well in these fixtures. So we'll take those Marcus Rashford points and the defensive points and run. But I think the City home game, they'll be up for it. And there will be space for them, I think, to exploit at the back against Man City. And obviously they beat Arsenal earlier in the season, just so. And then after that, they go into a good run. So I'm not too keen to dump Marcus Rashford. I think he's in good enough form that he stays for me now. Martial is expendable. And like I said, after the City Arsenal game, if I was moving Andy Robertson on then, I'd look at Luke Shaw as a possible replacement.
I think with Rashford, what you got to ask yourself is, obviously they're the two toughest fixtures, City and Arsenal. But what you got to ask yourself is, what if United do well in those two games? Well, it probably involves Marcus Rashford doing well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We spoke about this at the start of the season, that his record against the better teams in this league, because space is more of a potential prospect for him, actually is good. So I'm not stressed about holding him for these two. It was always a case of, look, get him in for the free, judge. I think I'm in a position where I've probably got bigger problems right now than worrying about keeping or selling Marcus Rashford. He can stay. Martial would probably be looking to move on. On United assets, no one's going to go and buy Luke Shaw this week unless suddenly it becomes a double. You've not let them three fixtures go and then gone, oh my God, I want to buy him now. No, it was to have at the start. All I'd say from my perspective, Suj, is I'm more interested in what happens with Diogo Dalot in the next week or so. So he should get minutes against Everton in the Cup tonight and against Charlton on Tuesday, or at least in one of them. And while everyone flocks towards Shaw, I'd like to go back and reference the fact that prior to the World Cup, it was Dalot was the one that was hoovering up the bonus and stuff. So I'm very keen to keep an eye on him for forthcoming weeks. He might be one to consider for usage to go alternative to Shaw. And that's not to say you should go on alternative. Luke Shaw's got himself in a really good position with his fitness and stuff again. I don't think you're going to get a huge number of attacking returns out of him and stuff, but they are one of the better teams defensively in this league now, and will be helped by, I'm sure, by the fact the time the City game comes around, it will be Varane and Martinez again, where they've obviously been having it patched up. Shaw had played twice at left-sided centre-back. He moved back to left-back for this fixture. Maguire and Lindelof covered for this particular fixture. They did keep a clean sheet. And it's worth saying Wan-Bissaka's performed okay at right back as well. But they'll be stronger for obviously having Varane and Martinez back at centre-back. If United can keep Varane and Casemiro fit, I think they'll finish top four. And I think they'll probably breeze it. I wouldn't be surprised to finish third. But I think they could lose those two players and very quickly it could become an issue again. Or even if they lose Rashford further up the field, if they don't add. We think they're trying to get an attacking player in this window, but it's always difficult to get quality in this window, and it doesn't sound like United want to spend big on someone in this particular window. Dalot on radar. Sure, I understand to be on radar. Rashford is definitely not a panic to sell. Martial, there'll be players you can get that are better, particularly if Tony stays available. Mitrovic, Wilson. There's other options that are a little bit pricier. On the prospect of Palace or Leeds being added to game week 20, I'm maintaining what I've been saying for the last couple of weeks. I don't think it will happen. But there is a timeline of process that you can do to understand. So, for example, if Manchester United and Everton draw tonight, you know it ain't happening. Simple as that. Because they'll replay in that midweek. That's it. If Crystal Palace draw with Southampton tomorrow, it can't be Crystal Palace. If Leeds draw at Cardiff on Sunday, can't be United versus Leeds. My take is, it's short notice. It's very short notice. No decision is going to be made till Monday at the earliest. And then you're at 8 days' notice. I don't think it will happen. It's not to say it can't. There's people out there who really, really think United are going to double in this coming game week. I'm not one of them.
Bournemouth are sliding slowly down the table. Now, they've got a horrible run now because Brentford is a horrible fixture at any time. They then go up against Nottingham Forest. That's what you'd call a 6-pointer. Straight after that, and following that, they have
Dog's dinner.
Brighton, Newcastle, then another 6-pointer, which is Wolves, and then City, Arsenal, Liverpool. So, yeah. I think with Brighton, my feeling is once they drop into the bottom three,
Bournemouth.
Bournemouth. These South Coast teams beginning with B. Bournemouth. Once they drop into the bottom three, psychologically,
Basingstoke are waiting for the mention, mate.
Are they on the coast today, James?
No, I don't know.
No, not even close, mate. It's going to be difficult for them psychologically to then start clawing their way back up, and they are on a slippery slide at the moment. Their goal difference -21 is pretty hideous as well compared to all the others down there. So Yeah, fearful for them. Let's see how they get on. But talking about one of their opponents coming up, now Southampton 0, Nottingham Forest 1. Great away win for Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, crucial victory, obviously. And deserved. Southampton didn't have a single shot on target. The story is probably more about them from an FPL perspective because of a few that will have gone for Adams on Proud. And it's kind of the old Wilfred Zaha problem, isn't it? You go in and the problem is you go, oh my God, these assets have been shit. But you keep looking at the next fixture and going, well, this next fixture's all right. Is it my biggest problem and stuff? And they've still got Everton, Villa, then Brentford obviously doesn't look easy. Wolves at home, but it's still, as a group of 4 fixtures, it's pretty good. If they don't do well in them, I think it'll be good night, mate, and they'll get cast adrift. They are in huge trouble, and Nathan Jones is already getting the chance of you don't know what you're doing on Wednesday night. And there are a number of Southampton fans would change that already, by the way. I would honestly strip that. Everything that football club's been, a lot of them would strip it right now and get someone like Sean Dyche in on a temporary contract and get them save them. I think I saw a stat that since the ownership changed last January, they've won 6 league games.
Oh, wow. That's nothing.
In a year. So it might have been 8, but it's not a lot, but it's definitely single digits in the course of a 12-month period. So we shouldn't be surprised that they're in this position. Can't kick clean sheets. It's been an ongoing problem for a really, really long time. And they always have that little period every year. We think, oh, no, they've lost 1 in 8. They look a good side again. That really doesn't look like it's going to happen this time. Concede too many goals, don't score goals. Completely reliant on an 18-year-old kid coming in and doing the business from him, Romeo Lavia, who certainly will help them. But I don't think it'll be Southampton playing next year because I think someone else will buy him, irrespective of what league they're in, because he's a brilliant little kid. They're in massive trouble. Whereas Forest, slowly, it feels like it's coming together. And it's coming together because the team's getting settled. So the first time this season, they picked the same lineup in back-to-back games. Brennan Johnson looks more powerful and fitter. Looks like he's beginning to feel like he belongs in the league. I think Awani gives them a big target. He looks like the sort of fellow who's just at his dinner every time he gets on the pitch. He is a real powerful player. And they've finally decided what they want to do with the midfield 3. Yates, Freuler, Mangala. That's the midfield 3 now. Gibbs White floating in front of that to go and do what he wants and create a little bit of havoc. And they've been better since they changed to 2 centre-backs and went to Joe Worrell and Willy Bolly as well. Auria's first choice now ahead of Williams. Loddie's got it at left-back at the moment, but I think pressure might come from Richards as we progress and as he gets fit. But yeah, finally the team looks settled. And that's having a major impact on them. And I tell you what, their next 4 aren't bad. Leicester, Bournemouth, Leeds, Fulham. They've actually got an opportunity to pull away. And we discussed this with Mark Subbins when he came on COTC before they lost at United. And we said, look, beyond that United game, there's a run of games there, important. And if you do well in them, you might pull away from trouble. And they'll think they're going to beat Leicester next week. And they'll think they're going to go to Bournemouth and win afterwards. And then they've got Leeds at home and they'll think they're going to win that as well. I promise you, their confidence is up. And I wouldn't be surprised if after that Leeds game, we're looking at them and going, fuck are they doing in 12th? But I think it could be like that. And that's not to say that they won't get sucked back into it because then they've got a really tough run of fixtures after that as well. But they've got an opportunity here and I wouldn't mind betting they'll do quite well in these forthcoming games. Williams, I don't think is going to get back in as first choice, personally. Although Auria's never far away from an injury. I don't think Forest assets are on agenda at the moment. So I think someone like Gibbs White could be interesting, but you've got all them sub 5 million midfielders, which we're now adding like Mitoma to as very interesting. And I think similar applies up front where you're probably not coming down to Johnson now when he is price. You might be coming all the way down to like Evan Ferguson, Sam Greenwood and stuff. But I think they might do well in the next few. If you got Dean Henderson in goal, you'd be pretty happy at the moment. You got a bonus point. He didn't make saves, Suj.
Oh, wow. Passes?
I wouldn't have thought so, mate. He's probably more lack of contribution. I looked into it, to be honest. He's probably more lack of passes from the rest of the team in terms of the defensive players. And probably as well, lack of defensive stuff like clearances and blocks and stuff. Because, to be honest, from Southampton, it's powder puff stuff.
Yeah. Leeds 2, West Ham United 2, Desmond 2-2 in this one. A lively game with a lot of end-to-end and a lot of chances. Maybe lacked a little bit in quality, did this one. West Ham switching back to, a 4-3-3 really now, with Paqueta, Rice and Souček playing in the middle. Kehrer playing at left back, and Creswell dropped after his horror show against Josh Da Silva. I watched this game. Obviously, I didn't see anything from West Ham that would make me want to invest in any of their assets from an FPL point of view. It is getting better, but it's getting better like inches and inches and inches rather than like a real sea change. But it is getting a little bit better. And Wolves, Everton, West Ham will really need to get results, but you can't be putting your FPL money into any kind of FPL assets there. Leeds are different now, aren't they? We talked about this in Tottenham with some of these tricky, skillful forward players in Ononto and Somerville and even Rodrigo you can put into that bracket. Although Jack Harrison played really well when he came off the bench as well. Wouldn't be surprised to see him work his way back into the starting 11 because he is a good player as well. They're good cheap assets there at Leeds. I think that you can consider from an FPL point of view, but not so much from a West Ham point of view.
West Ham would be no consideration right now because I think if you were going to go in, you'd have gone before the Brentford game and you'd have gambled on the 4 fixtures. So, despite the fact it's Wolves and Everton next, I mean, do you know what? If somebody wants something for 2 games, go and buy Thilo Kehrer because we know he'll play. We just don't know what position because it's something different every game for the poor bugger. Or you can go Flappy in goal for a couple of games. If you know you're wild carding in game week 22 for whatever reason, then okay, maybe you could look at West Ham for Wolves and Everton. But Ben Rama come back out of the team. He'd have been the offensive one that was of interest. So no, wouldn't be looking there. Just a note on Leeds, obviously, there are a few really good, interesting assets here. Just be aware. I think it's easy to forget about Luis Sinisterra, who's obviously been out injured. He's not far away, apparently, and that'll put some pressure on the likes of Nonto and Somerville. Nonto's a 5 million forward. So it's another one, I think, at the moment, like if we look at them Forest forwards, I think you'd come down further to that, or Sam Greenwood, as I said previously, who, with Greenwood, when he gets on the pitch, he starts getting on the odd set pieces and stuff. The corner they nearly scored from at the end it's his delivery, even though he's on the pitch for 12 minutes. So he's kind of ideal as the third forward on your bench who isn't starting regularly, but I know he's like a 1-point insurance and stuff. Somerville's the one for me who I'm really, really interested in. But it's almost like I don't need to go there. So I think on the face of it, I'd look at it at the moment and say, if I think Somerville's going to stay in the team, do I think he's worth the saving versus his teammate Rodrigo? And I think for that 2 million saving, he might be. But to be blindly honest with you, Suj, I don't know what I'd do with that 2 million.
Yeah. And would you play Somerville week in, week out? Would you buy him as one of your starting 11 or would you be buying him as bench fodder?
It would be a psychological, wouldn't it? But I think you could put yourself in a position where you made week-to-week decisions, whether you played Somerville or Pereira, for example. Now, that's the sort of thing where allow you 3 premiums. It might even allow you 4 if you want to consider that sort of thing. But Rodrigo, as I said to you earlier, is right on radar for me, Suj. 10 goals, 1 assist. And he's not like he's played every minute this season. He obviously had the problem where he went off injured against Everton in game week 5, having scored 4 in the first 3. He missed the defeat at Brentford. Then he only played 67 against Villa. Then there was half-hearted minutes, 45 against Arsenal, 45 against Leicester. And then since then, he's not even been playing 90 minutes regularly. Although this was the first one since he come back from injury was against yourselves. He hadn't completed 90 minutes and he was beginning to find a target again prior to the World Cup. And okay, he blanked against City and Newcastle, but he blanked against City and Newcastle. We shouldn't be surprised about that. He's really interesting at 6.3. He is the best OOP player in this game at the moment. Forget, oh my God, Cancelo's at right wing. Listen, sod that. That's useless for everybody. Rodrigo is OOP, number 9 for Leeds. They have some interesting fixtures coming up. Villa, Brentford at home, Forest away, even United at home. You know what? It'll be intense. It's like a derby game. Then Everton away, Southampton at home, which could be postponed if Southampton get to the Carabao Cup final. They won't. So there's a really good run of fixtures there where the more I'm thinking about it, the more I think the -4 Rodrigo and Kane might be of interest to me, actually, Suj. He's a good price, 6.3 in midfield.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about Aston Villa 1, Wolves 1, a draw for these two here. Unai Emery's winning kind of run comes to an end.
Yeah, you seen Leon Bailey after the game? Poor
I
fucker.
haven't.
He's crying his eyes out, mate.
You can tell me why?
Well, he had the big chance and he should have scored. And he'd probably haunted by the fact he'd had some good chance against Liverpool and missed as well. But yeah, he'd obviously had this big chance right at the end, goes round Sarr, and it wasn't like a certain scoring chance. And I think it was Kilman was getting back on the line and stuff, but he's fluffed it really. And the final whistle goes and he just lays head first on the ground. Like when someone's inconsolable and you can see like their bodies dancing. That's what he was, properly crying. You had players like not carrying him off the pitch, but arms around him going off the pitch. You could see he'd been crying and stuff. But I suppose it shows the emotions there and he cares. I'd be a little bit conscious though for those who own that. I mean, he's another one, isn't he? 4.5. What super value? He nearly scores nearly every week, but it is that. And I wonder if Ings and Watkins might get a run together. That said, Ings has come on in this game, and it was Watkins who was withdrawn. But I'm not sure how long Unai Emery will keep ignoring Danny Ings' potential for goals, particularly in fixtures like this, where you know it's going to be a little bit more difficult and you've got to be a bit more ruthless with your chances because you're going to play against the shit as Wolves have been. They're still pretty stingy to score against and stuff. So I wonder if we might see a bit more of Ings and Watkins. They played Matty Cash on the right-hand side of midfield. That didn't work. That's what they did latter in the game against Tottenham when they were shutting the game down and stuff. That didn't work. So obviously John McGinn was a miss for them. That's what they decided to do. They changed out half-time when they moved Cash back to fullback and put Philip Coutinho in ahead of him. And they were much better for it. Wolves were the better side in the first half. Villa were the better side in the second. And what that allowed is, I spoke about this a lot with Buendia on the last podcast, get the wide players into 10 positions where it moves from a 4-4-2 to a 4-2-2-2. And that was much better for him. And I think Cash will probably stay in the team up right back now. If people are interested in that, there's a couple of good fixtures to go. Leeds, Southampton, Leicester, if people are interested. Might be one for you, Suj. Tyrone Mings is the one I've suggested as it's 4.3. You could play him in the short term and then it's cheap enough that you can bench it going forward and stuff. I know there's a few people conscious Diogo Carlos is due a return possibly in February and stuff. But I think it might be for Konsa rather than Mings actually when that moment comes round. Wolves, it's 4 points in the last 2 away from home since Julian Lopetegui took over. They've lost Boubacar Traore for a prolonged period in midfield, which is a blow for them because he was just beginning to get integrated into the team. And Daniel, he's made of Poppadom Podence, as Bradley Parker always tells us, went off with another knock, but we think he's okay. One to keep an eye on is Matthias Cunha, 5.5 million forward, who came on the second half. So obviously they've got him in on loan till the end of the season. He might become first choice, but after West Ham is City away and Liverpool at home. The only Wolves player that anybody would be looking at of interest right now is Bueno, who's 3.9. He's playing regularly. Again, it's another one, perhaps for you, Suj, offers you the money to do something else. One note I would say is the goal was his fault. Way too deep. And he'll have to learn not to do that. And I understand why he got too deep, but he ended up playing Danny Ings onside. And as a fullback, you shouldn't get yourself into that position. But I don't think Lopetegui trusts Aït-Nouri at left back, so I think he'll keep playing. And otherwise, apparently, he played well again. Otherwise,
Crystal Palace 0, Spurs 4. I think this is one of those where it's a bit of a funny one because the likely suspects from Spurs that people may have wanted to consider from an FPL point of view would be like Kane and Son are always in and around the conversation. Then you look at the wing backs and Perisic and Doherty also both returned, one with a goal, one with an assist. Am I right to just say to anybody that's asking about any Spurs assets, Arsenal, City, Fulham, City. You've got City twice and Arsenal next. There's 3 of the next 4. It's just not. There's every chance that they could return in these games, but it's just not worth the risk.
Look, with Harry, it's different, isn't it?
Well, you weigh up A versus B, right? Any decision you make in FPL is A versus B. So if you've got Harry Kane versus Arsenal, City, Fulham, City, or you've got Callum Wilson with Fulham, West Ham, and whoever else they're playing, Fulham, Palace, West Ham, Bournemouth, who's going to score more points over those 4 games? Who's more likely to score more points?
Harry
And
Kane.
I'd say Callum Wilson is more likely to score more points over that period than Harry Kane,
I disagree with that.
based on the fact that
But
Arsenal have the one of the best defenses in the league, and Man City will dominate the ball for 80%.
based on Harry Kane's only got 17 less points than Erling Haaland this season.
Correct. But I'm not talking about the whole season, am I? I'm talking about 4 specific fixtures, 2 of which are Man City and 1 of which is Arsenal. So
All right,
they're not
serious
comparable.
question. So, who do you think scores more in game week 20? Wilson at home to Fulham or Kane with Arsenal at home and Man City away?
That I think is close. But again, he's got an extra fixture there. So this is the difference between buying and holding. If you own a Spurs asset with a double game week coming up, I'm not saying sell it. Like, that's stupid. But whether or not I would be buying new now, not just based on the fact that you've got difficult fixtures in the next 4, your form isn't there to justify it either. My point being here is people look at it and say Spurs 4, Crystal Palace 0, Kane scored 2, Son's got 1, and the wing backs have returned. Maybe we can pile into. And I'm saying that's not the case. And
I certainly
not
going to, what I would say, I'm certainly not going to tell anyone not to buy Harry Kane because I might well be buying Harry Kane. It's more about its possibility, Suj. So Arsenal City obviously is 2 ridiculously tough fixtures, right? But he's mad talismanic. And fixtures don't bother Harry so much. And to be honest, you're not going to captain him anyway. You're not going to captain Kane over Haaland, right? If the City double goes ahead. So it's just about what can I do to make my team better in the immediate. He scored 13 points at home to Arsenal last season. He scored 13 points away to Man City last season. Now, if he repeats that, he's getting a double game week score of 26. Now, we know that's not going to happen. But it just shows you that with Harry, I don't think fixtures matter so much. I'll scream it all the time that his performances away from home are as good as at home. Fulham away in 21 isn't a bad fixture for Harry Kane. Fulham give up chances. We've seen that.
Yeah,
even this week
that's a nice fixture sandwiched in between 2 games at City.
And obviously then it's City again, and it's obviously extremely tough. Of course it is. But then it's Leicester away, West Ham at home, Chelsea at home, Wolves away, Forest at home, Southampton away. And if you look at it over that longer and you commit to it and you say, I'm going for him, he's the best premium after Haaland at the moment, and he is at this moment in time, then I think that's okay. So for me, if I decide to go there, Suj, it's about saying I'm going to change the structure of this. He's 2 goals off Jimmy Groove's record. He's also now only 2 goals off 200 Premier League goals. And he's doing the business. And part of the reason he's doing the business is this failure to drop off deep, which it's good for him in terms of his goal scoring. He's bad for everybody else in the team because he's the best passer in the team. Now, there were glimpses that it was happening a little bit more in the Palace game, but only glimpses. And of course, on one of the occasions that he dropped deep, well, guess what? Sonny runs behind, Harry finds him, and Sonny scores. Shock horror. But that's not been happening for the majority of this season. That's good for Kane as an FPL prospect. It's very bad for Heung-min Son. Now, the fixtures coming up, we know that Sonny can perform in these fixtures, right? Because if Kane drops deep, we know that Sonny has got the pace to go in behind. And because of the caliber of opponent you've got, there is more space than would normally be there. So to say to you, Sonny can't perform well in game week 20, not going to say that to you at all. Would I go and buy him? Not for a second. I'd rather take a -4 for Kane than get Sonny for free. He's not playing well, and that's not changed. This mask is bugging him out. He's really bugging him out. And prior to the whole mask stuff, he wasn't playing well. He's not played well all season for Tottenham. This is only the second game he scored in. And you could say there's certainly an element of luck about the finish. Even on Doherty's goal, shoot, mate. Why are you overthinking things? He shoots, he scores. So just for whatever reason, instinctively for him at the moment, it's not happening. Now, we've seen it 100 times before with players. One goal changes everything. And that might be what happens for Sonny here. But honestly, I would rather take -4 for Harry Kane right now than buy Heung-min Son for 3. I could go Salah to Son, for example. No fault of doing that. I'd rather take the -4 for Harry Kane. That'd be my take. On the defensive wing backs, you should be good for minutes. I think Doherty and Perisic are clearly first choice now. There's not a question about it. 4 shots in the box for the Doc against Palace. The warning with Doherty will be that we know that Tottenham are trying to buy a right wing back. That would be the warning of it. Should you be okay for Arsenal and Man City? Yeah, I think so. I'd spoken in the past saying that you should be cautious that Emerson is better defensively and because the tougher fixtures may come back in. But I don't think that will be the case, actually. I think Doherty will stay in the team. Perisic, if he's fit, will definitely play both of those 2 games. No doubt about it. But you really probably are relying on the attacking returns to get something out of that double because I don't see us keeping Arsenal out. And obviously, I don't think we'll keep City out of the Etihad. We do have a great historical record against Man City, but as you correctly pointed out to me a couple of weeks ago, you never played a Man City with Erling Haaland, and I can't argue that.
No. Any thoughts around Crystal Palace? Because they've got a difficult run now. Chelsea, Newcastle, Manchester United, Brighton, then Brentford, then Liverpool. I mean, that's difficult game after difficult game. I mean, Chelsea probably looks like the easiest of all of those at the moment, and that's their next game.
Yeah, he's pretty damning for Palace because to kind of add on to the Tottenham narrative, we didn't play well. This wasn't the 4-0 game. Did we deserve to win by the end? Yeah, probably. But in reality, we played well for the first 10 minutes of the first half. We played well for probably minute 48 to minute 58 or so, and then strolled through the rest, and Palace lost their heads a bit. They were bang average. They had a few issues. So a lot's been made of Brian Hill's performance. He did play really well, but I think Joel Ward at left back is a good player to play against. You haven't got to worry about what he's doing that way and stuff. And I don't think that helped Zaha that he didn't have kind of Tyreek Mitchell really in support of him. I thought the midfield 2, Decore and Schlupp, struggled a bit. Eze had a quiet game. Elise was the one when it got into him, he thought, there's something there. Jordan Ayew up front, he does a great job for the team, but you never think he's going to get the returns and stuff. And you're absolutely right, Suj. This is awful for Palace all the way up to April. There isn't a good fixture in sight. You'd make a case that their easiest fixture between now and April is Brighton at home. You could make that case. We've got Brentford and Villa also to play, but they're both away. Now, Palace sometimes can be better away from home, a bit more space on the counter. And I don't doubt, by the way, that in some of these fixtures, they'll do well. But for some reason, defensively, they're not performing at the level that they did last season. They don't look like they're going to get many clean sheets. And certainly from an FPL perspective, I mean, that is so rough, that run of fixtures, all the way up to game week 29. That's literally no consideration for any of their players right now.
Let's talk about last.
They'll be all right, but that run's fucking hell, mate. Yeah. So bad.
They've done well to get themselves 7 points clear of relegation as it stands at the moment, because that could be.
I disagree with that because I think they should be better than that now, actually.
They should be, but that 7 points is enough that they don't need to be looking over their shoulder just yet, and maybe can scrape enough points.
But maybe it's not.
Clear.
We've just looked at Forest's next 3, and I wouldn't be surprised if Forest gets 7 points in their next 3, for example. And then the potentially level with Palace. Palace have got Chelsea, Newcastle, United over that period.
Right, let's talk about yesterday's game as the last, because we've been going for a little while and we want to get a couple of questions in on Twitter. I thought Chelsea had a good first half yesterday. I thought they did well. They caused some problems and kept the ball moving. Some neat plays, getting down the flanks reasonably well with Azpilicueta and Cucurella and what have you. City clearly also dominated such long passages of possession as well. It's like they just have this ability to knock the ball around. They weren't, though, very penetrative, like in terms of creating chances in the first half at all. Just felt a bit slow, really.
It felt to me like Guardiola had another one of his big overthinks. But I must massively credit him this time, because when he's done this in the past, he's been stubborn about it and he's stayed with it. He's like, no, I know best. This time, he's changed it at half-time. And he changed it back to what they'd used against Leeds and Everton, and immediately the team looked better. It might have been that the personnel and the changes of Lewis and Akanji being fitter and more up speed than Cancelo and Walker may well have helped as well. But definitely, as soon as they made them changes at half-time, everything that they were doing looked quicker, faster, more controlled, and more consistent with what we're familiar with Manchester City. So it's difficult to even explain what they tried to do in the first half from a system perspective. But I'll go for it and say essentially it was 3-2-4-1 within possession, where Walker and Aki as the two fullbacks were sitting off and coming inside to join John Stones. Rodri was moving from centre-back into midfield with Bernardo, that was then allowing Gundogan to push further into a kind of wide 10 position to the left. De Bruyne was doing to the same to the right, and Cancelo and Phil Foden were constantly hugging the touchline and played very similar roles to how they played in the defeat at Liverpool earlier in the season. It didn't work then, and it didn't work yesterday. And why the determination to try this with Cancelo and Foden? I wouldn't say like wing-backs, wingers with defensive responsibilities, more what I'd describe it as, in a big game, rather than a game that you're actually going to control and dominate in. I cannot understand, because I'm absolutely certain that with the injury issues that Chelsea have 5 key players missing. We've spoken heavily about Chilwell, James, and obviously N'Golo Kante being pivotal to how they played. They had those 3 missing. And then on top of that, I did a preview for our patrons yesterday about why I thought Chelsea should play a diamond. Well, the 2 players that have played at the base and the tip of that, they were both unavailable in Jorginho and Mount. So Potter then had no choice but to line up in the way he did. And you can see that from the personnel they've ended up using from the bench. These very young players. They've got a lot of injury issues. And Chelsea largely did quite well. Chelsea were there to be torn apart. And I'm absolutely certain that if City had started the first half, where they started the second half, they wouldn't have given themselves the stress and the sweat last night. Because they'd have just dominated the game and completely controlled Chelsea. And I think, honestly, they'd have won 3 or 4-0. That's my honest take. But instead, they gave themselves this headache and a little bit of pressure. And the 20 minutes or so after they changed, they just pinned Chelsea in. Chelsea couldn't get out. And it's not a Chelsea fault or Chelsea problem. Just City going back to being their dominant best. And I'm still angry as a neutral watching the game that Guardiola tried to do that in such an important game where you can't afford to be going any further behind to Arsenal. And I guess that's what's annoying me, was watching it as a Tottenham fan going, I need you to win this football match. Stop pissing about. That's probably why I got so annoyed. In terms of what happens next for City, I mean, who knows? Maybe he'll try something again at Old Trafford. I wouldn't put it beyond him. I would imagine because of Rashford that Kyle Walker will play at right back. It must be said that Rico Lewis looks a very special talent. I imagine Walker would probably play against Rashford. I don't think it's a certainty that Cancelo would play at left back at all.
Okay.
And there's a lot of people, should I sell him? Should I move him on? Well, my take is at the moment that I don't really know what he's going to do. And therefore, I've got the City double sitting in front of my face. At the moment, he stays. Should City's double go, I might sell him. But to move it from Cancelo to Stones, I mean, it might be that Cancelo didn't play against United and then hauled against Tottenham. It's not enough for me to thump it about, I don't think. So, but I can understand people's frustrations. If you want to downgrade to a City defender, honestly, right now, I'd probably say John Stones, because I thought he was outstanding. He was the one City player in the first half who I thought really kind of shone through when they were struggling, in terms of his defensive work, his leadership. Everything about John Stones' performance was really good last night. But Pep Guardiola might completely disagree with that, because he disagrees with a lot of things, I think, and he knows better than me. But John Stones would probably be the one if you wanted to stay within City. But I don't think you need to. Like, he's probably more like Newcastle again or something. If you haven't got... Now, for me, who's on the double, I'm not probably making that a treble, to be totally honest. And I probably would more consider someone like John Stones to come down to. It's not going to work for me. I'd hold on. KDB, I have no idea he hasn't returned in these 3 games. He looked the most likely to get on the score sheet for City last night. He'd created loads of chances in the Leeds and Everton game. Again, he's going to stay for me for the double. Then there's some fixtures that's going to make it very difficult for me to come off him, but it just might be that spreading the money is a better idea. I feel like what I want to do with KDB is I kind of want to keep him in and stay. If I'm potentially going to remove Salah, he stay close enough where I can make a decision where it's going to be one of Salah, KDB. One of the reasons I started with both was I felt it was too difficult a decision. Hindsight, the real answer to the trivia question, Suj, was start with neither of them and just spread the money and obviously have Kane and stuff. To go back on to why have Kane. So the City 3 I've got, I'll hang on to. Don't see that changing. But if obviously the Tottenham game was postponed, I might move Cancelo on.
I've only got 2, Cancelo and Haaland, and I'm not massively desperate to add a third, to be honest with you, because I feel like I worry that I'll only get 1 out of the 2 games, unless I decide to go KDB, but I don't see a situation where I'll do that. Put it this way, I'd rather engineer a way of getting Kane into my team for the double game week than KDB into my team for the double game week.
Yeah, I think with Harry now, I'm psychologically conscious that, you know me, I underappreciate the talents of Tottenham players, perhaps when they're good sometimes. I think, if they do well and they're not in my team, fine, I'm happy anyway. But I think I know going into this week, if I don't have him and he does well, he's going to be a real problem for my FPL team. And again, I'm still going to be happy. But I'm probably looking at it and going, I'm not sure I need to fight against this when there's a good long period. If we look right up to March, there's a good long period for Harry Kane. We've got no doubt that, say, Chelsea in game week 25 is on the Carabao Cup final weekend. We know that game will happen. So Tottenham are in the clear in terms of could games go right up until game week 28, and there's some good fixtures in there. And even if the City game did get postponed, there's every chance it could quickly go into another week. Is possible. But at City and Tottenham are on alternative nights in the Champions League. So if it didn't stay quite soon, then it won't be till sort of April or so. I don't know if they'd arrange it for the 4th round replay weekend, because I think that's in between 22 and 23, and then Tottenham would end up playing City twice inside like 4 days. So it might be that if it gets postponed, it might be it doesn't get rearranged too quickly.
Cool. There we go. That's a wrap up of all of the games, James. We've had a lot of kind of FPL related questions, which I'm loath to look at.
It's an FPL podcast, as much as we don't admit it. It's in the title, Suj.
I get it, but it's not. It's more a case of like, would you get player A versus player B? Until the cup games are out of the way, James, I don't think it's like, should I, there's questions like, shall I move off Cancelo? I'm like, how can you decide that until you know where you've got through with,
we've had a conversation about it.
And well, yeah, exactly that. So I think it's, there's a lot of, we'll be able to do a Q&A pre game week 20. I lose track of what all of these numbers are. There are a couple of other interesting questions in, like Tom from Who Got the Assist. James, he wants to know, do you regret captaining Haaland over Mitrovic? He doesn't, but he's interested to hear your thoughts.
No, and I covered that near the start. I said that if I had to make the same decision again, I would make the same decision again, because I generally thought City would probably score more than Fulham over the course of the game week. And it was close enough that I didn't need to take the gamble. And in years gone past, I would have plenty of times, I've got to have the double. I've got to have the double. I didn't need to. Would I be in a better position now if I'd captained Mitrovic over Haaland? Yeah, by 3 points. I'd have 10 for Mitrovic plus 2 for Haaland. As it's worked out, I'm on 9. So I'm 3 points worth off. Did it really matter that much? 3 fucking points. All right, okay, fine.
Not particularly, no. Good. Do you want to tell the listeners what we planned next week? Do we know what we're doing on
no.
the content, or that's to follow? So the listeners, you need to
follow.
Head over to twitter.com/PL pod.
What I can definitely tell you is that it'll be Everton Southampton. Clash correspondence will be on Tuesday with Sean Norton, Matt Samuel. It will be Sky Pod Wednesday. Other than that, I haven't decided yet, but there'll be some chip talk in there somewhere, I'm sure.
And Sky Fantasy Football on Wednesday, where we'll be planning for after the FA Cup and looking a little bit more at the fixtures. You never know if we have any more rearrangements announced. Probably unlikely, but you never know. That will be all coming at you next week. Other than that, a weekend of FA Cup football, James, for people to enjoy.
Yeah,
Bring on
and
the giant killings.
good luck to the 9,000 Portsmouth fans travelling to White Hart Lane tomorrow. I hope you enjoy your day till it kicks off. You got to sell Patreon, you lazy bastard.
We're getting there. First we do content, then we do Patreon.
I'm not sure you
Give us
was.
a chance. We're getting there. Patreon.com/Planet FPL is where you can get access to all of our additional content. Each and every weekday, there's an additional podcast for the advanced tier. There's additional video content as well. We have a Slack community with over 650 engaged and cool FPL and Sky Fantasy Football and Gaffer and Fantasy Champions League managers chatting and discussing ideas, Fantasy Scotland as well, all within that community. And we have prize leagues where you can win Manager of the Month prizes between now and the end of the season. I'm sure there's people within the Patreon, James, that get their Patreon back from winning the prize league, Manager of the Months and what have you, quite regularly. So,
yeah, mate, listen, if you're in at the start of the season, you win the advanced tier Patreon mini league, you've got like 2.5 years worth of free Planet Patreon
as well.
Basically.
But yeah, more than anything else, it helps keep the show going, keeps the lights on, keeps us in microphones and all that kind of stuff. So yes, we would love to have you as part of our Patreon in January. Whatever tier you join at, we have 3: basic, intermediate, and advanced. You'll be bumped up. So at basic tier, which is only £3 a month, as James says on his streams regularly, it's less than a cup of coffee in London. You will get all of the intermediate tier content, which is the additional podcast, as well as access for the duration of the month to the back catalogue, which includes Goodbye to the Lane, James's audiobook that he recorded. Oh, that's not on there.
No, that's not true.
Do they not get access to the back catalogue, or not everything is available?
No.
We should have. If
you want the back catalogue, you need to be in an intermediate tier. I'd have to go back and repost everything, Suj.
I understood. All right, technically ignore that then. I understand why you have to decide what's available to who, as opposed to changing the tier of the user. Sorry, scrap that. You don't get the back catalogue. You'll get this catalogue. And if you decide that you enjoy it so much, stay as a patron. But yes,
jump up to intermediate tier, and then you got the back catalogue.
Indeed, and that's only £8 a month. So do come and have a look. And if you enjoy it, stay. And if you don't, there's never any obligation. But we'd love to have you there. Now, other than that, enjoy the FA Cup weekend. Stay safe and look after yourselves. Ciao for now.
Thanks, everyone. Take the weekend off from FPL. Good luck if your team's playing in the FA Cup. Be nice to each other and cue music, please. Man, shout.